The billionaire father cried every night for his daughter, until the cleaning lady's daughter changed his life. Patrick Reynolds woke up before the alarm went off, as he had for the past few months. He couldn't sleep properly anymore. He would just lie there, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the day to begin. 45 years old, graying hair, eyes that were once bright blue. Now they were just empty, like everything else in that house. He got up slowly and went to the window. Outside, the garden was impeccable. The gardener came every week, mowed the lawn, pruned the flowers, everything perfectly tidy, everything perfectly dead to him. Patrick descended the wide marble staircase. His footsteps echoed in the entrance hall, a sound that used to bother him. Now it was just another empty noise in a house full of emptiness. In the kitchen, the table was set for one, always for one. The housekeeper had left everything ready the night before, as she had for the past 8 months. No, he wasn't going to think about that now. Black coffee, toast without butter, orange juice he wouldn't touch. The same routine every day. He ate half a piece of toast and pushed the plate away. His stomach simply refused. Later, he picked up the newspaper from the doorstep. Bad news, as always. Wars, accidents, plummeting economies. The world kept spinning, people kept dying, life kept us going. What a cruel joke. He folded the newspaper without finishing it and went up to his office. He turned on the computer, opened his emails. The company had been running itself for months. His partners took care of everything. "Take all the time you need, Patrick," they'd said. "We understand," but no one understood. How could they? He then closed the laptop and went to the library, his favorite place, or what was left of it. The shelves reached the ceiling, filled with books he no longer read. Classics, biographies, novels that once made him laugh. Now the pages seemed too heavy to turn. He sat in the brown leather armchair, the same one where he used to read to. The silence of the house was deafening. Not even the ticking of the old clock could fill it. It was a different kind of silence, not peace, but absence, as if the house itself were holding its breath. Patrick closed his eyes and tried to remember the sound that used to echo through these halls. Laughter. Little feet running. A clear little voice shouting, "Daddy," from upstairs. Claire, his daughter, was 5 years old when... No, not when. Just Claire. Golden hair that shone when she ran through the garden. Blue eyes like his, but full of life. Always full of life. Always asking questions, always making up crazy stories, always... The house seemed to grow even quieter. Patrick opened his eyes and looked at the coffee table. There, where children's books used to be scattered, was now only a business magazine that no one read. The contrast was brutal. He stood up and walked to the library window. From there, he could see the playground he had built in the garden 2 years ago. The swing was still there, swaying gently in the wind. Empty. Always empty. Sometimes he thought about having it removed. It would be easier, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the last thing that still connected this house to what it once was. The phone rang. Patrick looked at the device on the desk as if it were an alien. Who would be calling? His parents were gone. He had no siblings. The few friends he had had stopped trying after the 3rd month of monosyllabic conversations. It rang 4 times and stopped. The answering machine kicked in with his voice, recorded months ago. "You've reached the Reynolds family. Please leave a message after the beep." The Reynolds family, what a lie. Now it was just Patrick Reynolds. A man in a house that was too big, too quiet, too empty. He returned to the armchair and picked up a random book from the table. Moby Dick. He opened it to a random page and tried to read. The letters seemed to dance on the page. He closed the book and put it back. The morning dragged on slowly. The day had barely begun, and it already felt eternal. Outside, he heard the sound of a car pulling up. Probably the mailman or the delivery boy from the pharmacy, or any of the people who came, did their job, and left without saying a word more than necessary. Everyone tiptoed around him, as if he might break at any moment. Maybe he would. Patrick looked around the library. The walls were filled with framed photos. His graduation, his wedding, company awards, and there on the side table, a small photo that shone even in the dim morning light. Claire on the playground, smiling with her 2 front teeth missing, hair messed up by the wind, eyes shining with pure happiness. She was on the swing, her little legs stretched forward, as if she were about to fly. Daddy, look how high I'm going." Her voice still echoed in his memory, clear, musical, full of life. Patrick picked up the photo and ran his finger over the frame. 8 months. 8 months since that voice fell silent forever. 8 months since the house died along with her. He put the photo back and sighed deeply. The air felt heavy, hard to breathe, as if the atmosphere itself were laden with sadness. The car outside started its engine and drove away. Another visit that came and went. Life went on outside. People working, children playing, families being families. But inside, time had stopped. Patrick stood up and walked to the library door. The hallway stretched out before him, long and empty. To the right, the staircase leading to the 2nd floor. To the left, the living room where no one sat anymore. Every room was a memory, every corner an echo of what was lost. But something was about to change in that silent house. Patrick didn't know it yet, but in a few days, those empty hallways would echo once more. Not with the same voice, but with something just as powerful. Life, stubborn as always, was about to find a way back in. For now, though, it was just Patrick and the silence. A man and his loneliness, in a house that held secrets of happiness and waited patiently for a second chance. Patrick was in the library when he heard the car pull into the driveway. He didn't look up from the book he was pretending to read. Just another person coming to work at the house. Life functioned around him, even when he wasn't part of it. The doorbell rang twice. Footsteps in the entrance hall. Low voices, talking with Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper who handled the staff hiring. Must be the new cleaning lady, Patrick thought. Mrs. Henderson had mentioned they needed someone for general cleaning. The previous woman had quit after 3 weeks. She couldn't stand the heavy atmosphere of the house. Not that he cared. More voices in the hallway. One of them was different, higher pitched, more young. Patrick frowned but kept his eyes on the book. It wasn't his problem. From downstairs, fragments of conversation reached him. "So you're familiar with the routine?" "Of course, Mrs. Henderson." "Mr. Reynolds prefers not to be disturbed." Patrick almost smiled bitterly. At least Mrs. Henderson knew the rules. After a few minutes, he heard footsteps moving away, the front door closed. Mrs. Henderson must be showing the new employee around the house, normal routine. But then he heard something different, smaller footsteps, lighter, as if Patrick stopped pretending to read and listened. "Mom, look at the size of this staircase." The voice was crystal clear, a child. Patrick felt his chest tighten. He slammed the book shut and stood up. He went to the library door and closed it. He didn't want to hear. But the walls couldn't completely muffle the childish curiosity echoing through the house. "Wow, how many rooms are there?" "Molly, stay close to me and keep your voice down." "Molly." The child's name was Molly. Patrick returned to his armchair, but he couldn't concentrate. How long had it been since he'd heard a child's voice in this house? 8 months. Exactly 8 months. He tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. The light little footsteps went up and down the stairs, exploring every corner. Sometimes they would stop, as if the girl were observing something with great attention. "What a pretty painting, Mom." "Shh, Molly. Remember what I said?" Patrick imagined the scene. A mother trying to work while looking after her daughter. She probably had no one to leave the child with. A difficult situation. Not that it was his problem. Later, when he went downstairs for lunch, Patrick saw signs of the new presence. A small, colorful backpack was leaning against the wall in the hall. Inside, he could see a teddy bear and some colored pencils. Mrs. Henderson appeared from the kitchen. "Mr. Reynolds, would you like me to serve lunch in the dining room?" "The office is fine," Patrick replied, "as always." "Of course, sir. Oh, and I wanted to let you know. Karen's, the new cleaner, brought her daughter today. I hope you don't mind. She said she'll arrange something else for tomorrow." Patrick just nodded and went upstairs. In the 2nd floor hallway, he stopped. One of the guest room doors was ajar. Through the crack, he could see a woman in her 30s organizing cleaning supplies. Karen had brown hair tied in a ponytail and seemed efficient. She worked in silence, focused. Where was the child? As if reading his thoughts, he heard a small voice from the end of the hall. "Mom, can I see the garden?" Patrick turned toward the voice. At the end of the hallway, near the large window, stood a little girl. Golden hair fell to her shoulders, big blue eyes fixed on the view outside. For a second, Patrick felt the world spin. The resemblance was... No, there was no resemblance at all. It was just some random child, in a house where children shouldn't be. The girl turned and saw him. Her eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. She just watched him for a moment before looking back at the window. Patrick continued walking and entered his office. He closed the door behind him, but the image of the girl was stuck in his mind. The golden hair, the blue eyes, the curiosity in her gaze. He shook his head hard. He was being ridiculous. He ate lunch alone, as always. Mrs. Henderson brought the tray and left without a word. Outside, he could hear Karen working. A vacuum cleaner, running water, organized footsteps. And every now and then a whispered question. "Mom, who lives in that room?" "Molly, I already told you not to touch anything." "I'm not touching, just looking." Patrick finished his meal without an appetite and returned to the library. He needed peace. He needed the silence he knew. But the silence was different now. There was life echoing through the halls. Footsteps that weren't his, voices that broke the emptiness. Late in the afternoon, he was trying to read when he heard a light knock on the library door. Not an adult's knock. Hesitant, small taps. "Molly, come here right now." The little footsteps scampered away. Karen must have called her daughter before she could bother the boss. Patrick looked at the door. For a moment, he almost wanted to know what the girl wanted, but the feeling passed quickly. As evening fell, he heard Karen gathering her things. "Let's go, Molly. It's time." "Already, Mom? But I haven't seen everything yet." "Tomorrow you'll stay home with Grandma." Patrick heard the front door close. The house returned to its usual silence. But it was a different silence now, as if it still held echoes of curiosity and life. He went to the library window and saw Karen putting the girl in the car. Molly looked back at the house before getting in. Her hair shone under the streetlight. When the car disappeared around the corner, Patrick stepped away from the window. The house was quiet again. Just the way he wanted it, or at least the way he thought he wanted it. That night, as he passed through the entrance hall, he noticed the rug was cleaner. The furniture had been polished. Karen was good at her job. He went up to his room, thinking that tomorrow everything would be back to normal. Karen would work alone, without distractions. Without a curious child exploring corners and asking questions. Without golden hair and blue eyes that reminded him of... Patrick stopped in the middle of the stairs. He wasn't going down that road. He wouldn't compare. He wouldn't let a stranger mess with his head. The girl was just another temporary presence in the house. Tomorrow she wouldn't be there, and everything would go back to how it was before, how it was supposed to be. But as he got ready for bed, Patrick couldn't get the image of those big, curious blue eyes looking at him in the hallway out of his mind. And for the first time in months, he wasn't sure if he really wanted everything to go back to absolute silence. The following days brought a different routine to the house. Karen had arranged for a babysitter for Molly, but the woman had fallen ill at the last minute. With no one to leave her daughter with, she called Mrs. Henderson to ask for permission to bring her one more time. "Just for today," she promised. "I'll figure it out by tomorrow." Mrs. Henderson sighed and agreed. She knew good cleaners were hard to find, and Karen was doing an excellent job. Patrick didn't know about this conversation. That morning, he had decided to leave the suffocating library and go to the back garden. He needed air. He needed something other than the four walls that seemed to be closing in on him. He sat on the stone bench under the large tree, in the farthest corner of the garden. It was a place Claire had loved. She used to play on the grass nearby while he read the paper on Saturday mornings, but now it was just an empty bench in a silent garden. Patrick sat there, staring into space. The flowers were beautiful. The gardener did a good job. Vibrant colors everywhere. But to him, everything was grey, as if he had lost the ability to see beauty in things. The sun was warm on his face. A light breeze rustled the leaves of the tree. It should have been relaxing, but Patrick only felt the familiar weight in his chest, the feeling that something was wrong with the world and always would be. That's when he heard little footsteps on the grass behind him. Patrick didn't turn around immediately. It was probably the neighbor's cat, which sometimes came looking for food, or a bird digging for worms. But the footsteps stopped right near him, too close to be an animal. Patrick glanced over his shoulder and was startled. Molly was standing there, less than 6 feet away, looking directly at him. Golden hair loose on her shoulders, shining in the morning sun, blue eyes fixed on his face, curious but respectful. "Hi," she said, simply. Patrick turned completely to look at the girl, unsure of what to do. Where was Karen? How had the child gotten there without him noticing? You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. Molly didn't seem intimidated. She tilted her head to the side, as children do when they are genuinely curious about something. "Why not? It's your garden." The simple logic of her answer left Patrick speechless for a moment. She was right, of course. It was his garden. He was the one being strange. "Does your mother know where you are?" "She's cleaning the big bathroom upstairs. She said I could play in the garden while she finished." Molly paused, watching Patrick carefully. "Do you always sit here?" Patrick didn't answer. He hoped the girl would get tired of asking questions and go play somewhere else, away from him. But Molly didn't move. She just stood there studying Patrick as if he were an interesting puzzle she was trying to solve. "My mom said you live all alone in this big house." Patrick sighed. That was just like a child, full of observations that adults avoided making. So what? It must be very quiet. A lot of empty rooms for just one person. She was right again, but Patrick didn't want to discuss it. He didn't want to discuss anything. He just wanted her to go away and leave him in peace. "Why don't you go play somewhere else?" he asked, trying not to sound too rude. Molly kept watching him as if she hadn't heard the question, or as if she had heard something completely different. "Why do you always look so sad?" The question came out so naturally, so directly, that Patrick felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. He looked at Molly, surprised by the brutal simplicity of her observation. "I'm not sad," he lied. Molly shook her head, disagreeing. "Yes, you are. Every time I see you around the house, you look like you've lost something very important." The accuracy of the observation left Patrick speechless. How could a 5-year-old girl see what adults pretended not to notice? How could she get straight to the point when everyone around him was tiptoeing? "You wouldn't understand," Patrick said, trying to end the conversation. "I can try to understand," Molly replied, with a seriousness only children can have. "Is it because someone died?" The question was asked so naturally that Patrick was shocked. There was no drama, no discomfort. It was just a child trying to understand the world around her. Patrick felt his chest tighten. He wanted to get up and leave, to return to the safety of the empty house. But something kept him there. Maybe it was the pure honesty in the girl's eyes. Maybe it was the exhaustion of carrying everything alone for so long. "Yes," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Molly nodded, as if that explained everything she needed to know. "Who?" A single word. Simple, direct, without judgment. Patrick looked at her, and for the first time in 8 months, he felt the urge to answer honestly. "My daughter is gone." Molly was silent for a moment, processing the information. Patrick waited for the obvious questions everyone asked. How did it happen? When? Was he okay? The questions he hated answering. But Molly surprised him. "That's why the house is so quiet," she said, more to herself than to him. Patrick blinked. The girl had understood, without details, without painful explanations. She had grasped the essence of his pain. "Yes," he confirmed. "How long has it been?" 8 months. Molly nodded again, as if she were doing calculations in her head. That's a long time to be sad all by yourself," she concluded. Patrick almost smiled at the childish logic, almost. "That's how it works when we lose someone we love," he explained, "but she wouldn't want you to be sad forever, right?" The question hit Patrick like a bolt of lightning. Claire really wouldn't want to see him like this, consumed by sadness, isolated from everyone. She had always been a cheerful child who spread happiness wherever she went. Probably not, Patrick admitted, surprised by his own honesty. Molly smiled, satisfied with his answer. Then, without warning, she ran off toward the house. Patrick remained there, confused. The conversation had ended as abruptly as it began. Part of him felt relieved. Now he could go back to his silence. But another part was curious about the girl's behavior. It didn't take long to find out. Molly came running back, holding a colorful piece of paper in her hands. She stopped in front of Patrick, a little out of breath from running. "Here," she said, holding the paper out to him. Patrick looked at what she was offering. It was a drawing made with colored pencils. There was a big house, presumably his, a tree, probably where they were, and two figures under the tree, a tall man and a little girl. Both were smiling in the drawing. The colors were vibrant. Bright yellow for the sun, lively green for the grass, light blue for the sky. Everything was cheerful and full of life. "Is this for me?" Patrick asked, taking the paper carefully. "You can have this one, so you won't be alone," Molly said, as if it were the most obvious solution in the world. Patrick looked at the drawing in his hands. It had been so long since anyone had given him a gift. It had been so long since someone had cared about him in such a simple and direct way. "Thank you," he said, and for the first time in months, the word came out completely sincere. Molly beamed. "Now you have something colorful to look at when you're sad," she explained. Patrick folded the drawing very carefully and put it in his shirt pocket right over his heart. "My mum's calling me," Molly said, hearing Karen's voice from the house. "Bye," and she ran off again, leaving Patrick alone on the bench. But it wasn't the same loneliness as before. There was something different in the air, something lighter. Patrick took the drawing out of his pocket and looked at it again. It was simple, childish, but there was something about it that touched a part of Patrick that had been dormant for 8 months. The pure generosity of the child, the desire to help without expecting anything in return. For the first time since Claire's death, Patrick felt a small smile touch his lips. Maybe the girl was right. Maybe it was time to stop being sad alone. In the days following their encounter in the garden, Patrick noticed a subtle change in the house. Molly still came with Karen when the babysitter wasn't available, but now there was something different about the girl's behavior. She no longer ran through the hallways with the same wild freedom as before. Instead, she moved with more attention, as if she were looking for something or someone. Patrick realized that, from time to time, she would appear in the places where he was. Not intrusively, but as if by coincidence. When he had coffee on the terrace, she would be playing in the garden, visible from there. When he walked through the hall, she would be helping Karen with some nearby task. It was as if she were testing the boundaries of this new connection between them. Patrick didn't know how to feel about it. On one hand, the girl's presence broke the dead silence of the house. On the other, it was still difficult to be around a child, especially one who reminded him so much of... But he didn't send her away. He couldn't. On a Thursday morning, Patrick was in the library as usual. He had taken the drawing Molly had given him out of his pocket and placed it on the desk, next to the book he was trying to read. The bright colors contrasted with the library's serious atmosphere. He glanced at the drawing from time to time, not quite understanding why he kept the image in his memory. The way she had drawn the smiles, the simplicity of the shapes, the pure joy that overflowed from the paper. That's when he heard a soft knock on the library door. It wasn't an adult's knock. It was small, hesitant, as if the person on the other side wasn't sure if they should be there. Patrick looked towards the door and felt his heart beat a little faster. He knew who it was. "Come in," he said, surprised by his own response. The door opened slowly, just a crack at first. Molly appeared, peeking through the gap as if checking if it was safe to enter. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. Patrick watched her for a moment. She seemed different today, more shy, more careful. She was holding something in her hands, hidden behind her back. "You may," he said. Molly opened the door completely and entered the library. She stood near the entrance, looking around with wide eyes. "Wow," she whispered. "How many books are in here?" "A lot," Patrick replied, watching her reaction. "Have you read all of them?" "No. No one can read all the books they own." Molly nodded, as if that made perfect sense to her. She took a few steps into the library, but still kept her distance from Patrick. "I like books too," she said. "My mom reads me stories every night before I go to sleep." "What kind of stories?" "About princesses, talking animals, adventures." Molly paused, thinking. "And sometimes sad stories that have happy endings." Patrick felt a pang in his chest. Sad stories that have happy endings. He wished real life worked that way. "That's nice," he said. Molly continued to explore the library with her eyes, clearly impressed by the size of the room. Patrick watched her, noticing how she moved carefully, respecting the space. "I made something for you," she said, finally getting to the point of her visit. Patrick looked at her hands, still hidden behind her back. What is it?" Instead of answering, Molly took a few steps closer, still hesitant but determined. She brought her hands out from behind her back and revealed a sheet of paper, larger than the previous one. Patrick could see it was another drawing, this one even more colorful than the first. There were more details, more elements. Molly had put a lot of effort into it. "It's for you," she said, holding the paper out to him. Patrick looked at the drawing without taking it immediately. This time, she had drawn the library. Everything was there. The tall shelves, the large window, even the armchair where he always sat, and in the center of the scene, two figures, a man and a girl, both holding books, both smiling. "Is it for me?" Patrick asked, genuinely surprised. Molly smiled, the first real smile since she had entered the library. "It is. I thought you'd like to have a drawing of the library too." Patrick took the paper carefully, as if it was something fragile and precious. He examined every detail Molly had included. She had paid attention to everything: the colors of the books on the shelves, the pattern of the rug, even the curtains on the window. "How long did it take you to make this?" "All of last night," Molly answered proudly. "After my mom read me a story and I went to bed, I stayed up making it. I used my little flashlight to see." Patrick was touched by the girl's dedication. She had sacrificed her sleep to make something special for him. A 5-year-old child had thought of him, had cared enough to brighten his day. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice huskier than he intended. "Really beautiful." Molly's smile grew even brighter. "Do you really like it?" "I do. Very much." Patrick rose from his armchair and walked to one of the shelves. He chose a special book, a first edition of a classic he had received as a gift years ago, back when he still believed life was made of beautiful and permanent things. He opened the book carefully and placed the drawing between the middle pages, then closed the book and put it back on the shelf. "This way it'll be safe," he explained to Molly, who was watching everything attentively. "Are you really going to keep it?" "I am. It's too important to leave just anywhere." Molly was radiant with his answer. She did a few little jumps of joy, unable to contain her happiness. "Can we be real friends now?" she asked, with the brutal honesty of children. Patrick looked at her, golden hair shining in the light from the window, blue eyes full of hope, a smile that lit up the entire room. It had been so long since someone wanted to be his friend. It had been so long since someone cared enough about him to do something special just to see him smile. "I think so," he said, and he realized he truly meant it. "Hi, great," Molly exclaimed. "I knew you were nice, even when you were sad." Patrick felt something stir in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in months. It was as if a part of him was waking up from a very long sleep. "My mum's calling me," Molly said, hearing Karen's voice echo through the halls. "You'd better go then." Molly waved and headed for the door. Before leaving, she turned back to him one more time. "Can I come here again tomorrow?" "You can," Patrick answered without hesitation. "Thank you. Bye, friend." And she ran off, leaving Patrick alone in the library. But it was a different kind of loneliness now. It wasn't the crushing emptiness of the past few months. It was a temporary solitude, one that he knew would soon be broken. Patrick looked at the shelf where he had stored the drawing. Then he looked at the armchair where he had been sitting when Molly entered. He could imagine her there, In the drawing, the two of them together, sharing stories. "My new friend," he murmured, almost to himself. The words came out naturally, without effort, and Patrick realized, with a mixture of surprise and relief, that it was the first time he had called someone a friend since Claire's death. The first time he felt that maybe, just maybe, he could have important people in his life again. Outside, he heard Molly talking excitedly with Karen about something. Her voice echoed through the halls, bringing life to the silent house. And for the first time in 8 months, Patrick didn't want the silence to return. Karen was cleaning the second-floor bathroom when she heard laughter coming from the library. She stopped what she was doing and listened. Yes, it was laughter. One voice was unmistakably Molly's. The other belonged to Patrick Reynolds. Karen dropped her cleaning cloth and walked slowly down the hall. The voices grew clearer as she approached. Molly was telling some excited story, and Patrick was responding, actually having a conversation. This was strange, very strange. In the weeks she had been working at the house, Karen had learned the unwritten rules. Patrick Reynolds was a private man who preferred to be alone. Mrs. Henderson had made that very clear on the first day. "Mr. Reynolds has been through a great loss," the housekeeper had explained. "He prefers not to be disturbed. Do your work and keep your distance." Karen had followed these instructions to the letter. She would greet him politely when she saw him in the halls, but she never initiated a conversation. She worked in silence, respecting his grief. And now Molly was in there, talking to him as if they were old acquaintances. Karen moved closer to the ajar library door. She could hear Molly asking about the books, and Patrick patiently explaining about different types of stories. His voice sounded different, lighter. For a moment, Karen felt relieved. Maybe Patrick was getting better. Maybe Molly's presence was good for him. But then worry took over. What if Patrick was just being polite? What if he was uncomfortable but didn't know how to send a child away? What if Karen was letting her daughter bother her boss, and it would cost her the job? Karen needed this job, desperately. After her divorce, she had been left with a lot of debt. Patrick's salary was the best she'd ever had, and the flexible hours allowed her to take care of Molly. She couldn't afford to lose this opportunity. The conversation in the library continued. Molly was explaining something about a drawing she had made, and Patrick seemed genuinely interested. But Karen couldn't shake her anxiety. She decided to wait outside until Molly came out. It didn't take long. Molly appeared at the library door with a huge smile on her face. Mom, Patrick liked my drawing. He put it in a special book." Karen forced a smile. "That's wonderful, honey. Now come here, I need to talk to you." She took Molly by the hand and led her to the end of the hall, away from the library. "Molly, sit here," Karen said, pointing to a chair near the window. The girl obeyed, still beaming with happiness. "Listen carefully to what Mommy is going to say, okay?" Molly nodded, paying attention. "You shouldn't bother the boss." Molly's smile vanished instantly. "But I'm not bothering him, Mom. We were talking about books. He said he liked my drawing." "I know, sweetie, but—" Karen paused, trying to find the right words. "Mr. Reynolds is a very busy person. He has important things to do, and he's been through some very difficult times. He needs peace and quiet." Molly frowned, confused. "But he didn't seem bothered. He laughed at my stories." "Even so, Molly, he was just being polite. Grown-ups sometimes do that. They pretend to like something so they don't hurt your feelings." The words came out harsher than Karen intended, but she was scared. Scared of losing her job, scared of not being able to pay the bills, scared of disappointing Molly yet again. "So he doesn't like me?" Molly asked, her eyes filling with tears. Karen's heart ached. "That's not it, love. It's complicated. When we work in other people's houses, we have to respect their space. Do you understand?" Molly shook her head, but Karen could see that she didn't understand. How could she? For a 5-year-old, the logic was simple. If someone talked to you and smiled, it meant you were friends. "Promise Mommy you'll leave Mr. Reynolds alone." Molly hesitated. Then she nodded slowly, a tear rolling down her cheek. "I promise. Good girl. Now come on, let's finish our work." In the following days, Karen noticed the change in Molly. The girl became quieter, less curious. When they came to work, Molly stayed close to Karen, not exploring the house as she used to, and most importantly, she didn't go to the library anymore. Karen felt relieved but also guilty. Molly seemed sad, less cheerful. But it was for the best, Karen convinced herself. It had to be. It was on a Tuesday that Patrick noticed her absence. He was in the library, as usual, but something was wrong. The house seemed quieter than normal. There were no little footsteps in the hall, no curious voices asking questions. Patrick realized he was waiting for Molly to show up with another drawing, or a story to tell, or simply to say hi, but she didn't show up. The next day, it was the same. Patrick heard Karen working around the house, but he didn't hear Molly. Not once. By Thursday, Patrick couldn't take it anymore. He left the library and went to find Karen. He found her cleaning the living room. "Karen," he called out. She turned, clearly surprised. Patrick never sought her out for a conversation. "Yes, Mr. Reynolds? Where is Molly?" Karen blushed instantly. She's at home with her grandma. I found a permanent babysitter." Patrick watched her for a moment. There was something in Karen's expression that didn't add up. Nervousness, perhaps. "She's not coming here anymore." "No, sir, I thought it was for the best. Why?" The direct question made Karen uncomfortable. She looked away, fidgeting with her cleaning cloth. "Well, I thought you didn't want to be disturbed." Patrick frowned. "Disturbed by what?" "By Molly, sir. I know she's too curious, asks too many questions. Children can be inconvenient." Patrick was silent for a moment, processing what Karen had said. Slowly, he began to understand what had happened. "Karen," he said, his voice firm. "Look at me." She raised her eyes, clearly embarrassed. "Did you tell Molly not to talk to me?" Karen swallowed hard. I just explained that she should respect your space, sir. "And why did you do that?" Because I thought you didn't want to be bothered. Mrs. Henderson said you preferred to be alone." Patrick stared at Karen for a long moment. He could see the fear in her eyes, the worry that she had done something wrong. "Karen," he said, his voice low but firm. "You're completely mistaken." She blinked, surprised. "No, Karen. I enjoy Molly's company. She makes this house feel alive again." The words came out with a conviction that surprised Patrick himself. But they were true. Molly had brought something to his life that he hadn't even known was missing. I didn't know," Karen whispered. "Please," Patrick said. "Bring her back. I miss our talks and the drawings. I miss her joy." Karen was stunned. She never imagined she would hear those words from her reserved, melancholy boss. "Are you sure, sir?" "Absolutely. Molly is welcome here whenever she wants to come." Karen smiled for the first time since the conversation began. "She'll be so happy." "She's been asking about you every day." Patrick felt his chest warm. "Then bring her tomorrow, and Karen." "Yes, sir. Don't ever tell her to leave me alone again. On the contrary, tell her I'm waiting for her." The day after his conversation with Karen, Molly arrived with a different kind of shyness. It wasn't the confidence of before, but it also wasn't the fear she had shown when Karen forbade her from talking to Patrick. It was a mix of hope and caution. Patrick was in the library when he heard the familiar little footsteps in the hall. This time, however, they stopped at the door. Molly appeared in the doorway but didn't come in as she used to. "Hi," she said, standing on the threshold. "Molly!" Patrick stood up from his armchair, genuinely happy to see her. "Come in, please. I was waiting for you." The little girl's face lit up as if someone had turned on a light inside her. "My mom said you like it when I come here." "I like it very much," Patrick confirmed, gesturing for her to come closer. "I missed you a lot these past few days." Molly ran into the library and stopped in front of Patrick, a smile taking over her entire face. "I missed you too. I made 3 new drawings at home, but my mom said I couldn't come give them to you." Patrick felt a pang of sadness imagining Molly making drawings at home, wanting to share them with him but being stopped. "Well, now you can give me as many drawings as you like. This library is yours too." In the following days, Molly completely returned to her old routine. Her energy came back twofold, as if she were making up for lost time. She explored the house with renewed interest, asked questions about everything, and whenever she saw Patrick, she ran to greet him. Patrick watched Molly with a different kind of attention now. There was something in her dedication that touched him deeply. He noticed how she was genuinely interested in everything he said, how she asked intelligent questions about the books, how her eyes sparkled when she discovered something new in the house. And most of all, he noticed how she always tried to brighten his day. Every drawing she made was specially thought out for him. When she made up stories, she always included the two of them as main characters on adventures together. All her attention, when she was in the house, seemed focused on making Patrick smile. And he did smile. For the first time in 8 months, Patrick found himself truly smiling, not just out of politeness or social obligation. One evening, alone in the library after Karen and Molly had left, Patrick reflected on the situation. He was sitting in his armchair, looking at Molly's drawings, which he now kept in a special folder. Each one represented a moment of connection between them, a little piece of joy she had decided to share. Molly was giving so much of herself to cheer him up, and he hadn't properly reciprocated. Sure, he cherished her drawings, listened to her stories with genuine attention, and talked with her about things that mattered to a 5-year-old. But he hadn't done anything special to show how much he appreciated her friendship. Patrick decided it was time to change that. On Saturday morning, he woke up with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in months. He left the house for the first time in weeks, for something other than work or mandatory appointments. This time he was going out of his own free will to find a gift for Molly. He drove downtown to a toy store he knew well. He had been there several times with Claire, and they always left with something new. The memories of those trips didn't hurt as much as he expected. They were nostalgic, but not devastating. The store was busy on a Saturday morning. Happy families browsed the aisles, parents helping children pick out gifts, kids running excitedly between sections, laughter and lively chatter echoing everywhere. Patrick felt a pang of longing, but this time it wasn't overwhelming. It was softer, more nostalgic, mixed with a strange sense of belonging. He walked slowly through the aisles, looking at the endless options. Board games, colorful children's books, stuffed animals of all sizes, dolls of every kind. What would Molly like? He stopped in the doll section and felt a little lost. There were so many different options: elaborate princesses, realistic-looking baby dolls, dolls that talked when you pressed a button, dolls that cried real tears. How could he choose? "Can I help you?" a friendly saleswoman asked, noticing his hesitation. "I'm looking for a doll for a 5-year-old girl," Patrick explained. "Is she your daughter, granddaughter, niece?" Patrick hesitated. How could he explain his relationship with Molly? "She's a special friend," the saleswoman smiled. "Any specific type of doll? Does she have any preferences?" Patrick thought about Molly, about the golden hair that shone when she ran through the garden, the always curious and bright blue eyes, the cheerful and imaginative personality. She loves stories. She's very creative, always making up adventures. And she has golden hair and blue eyes. The saleswoman nodded and led him to a specific shelf at the back of the store. "This one is perfect for imaginative children," she said, showing him a doll with wavy blonde hair and a detailed blue dress. She comes with several accessories, different outfits for various occasions, little books, even a small purse with treasures. Kids love creating stories with her. Patrick looked at the doll. It was truly beautiful, well made, so with careful details. The blue dress matched its eyes, and there was something in the doll's face that conveyed personality. "It's perfect," he said. "I'll take this one." He returned home with the carefully wrapped gift on the passenger seat. He felt a good kind of anxiety, a pleasant anticipation of seeing Molly's reaction. It had been so long since he had felt the excitement of giving someone a gift. Karen and Molly arrived on Monday morning as usual. Patrick waited patiently until Karen was busy cleaning the upstairs bathroom to call Molly into the library. "Molly, can you come here? I have something for you." Her eyes widened immediately. "Something for me?" Patrick took the wrapped box that he had strategically hidden behind the large armchair. "It's a gift, to thank you for all the joy you've brought to this house, and to my life." Molly looked at the box in absolute disbelief. It was large, carefully wrapped in gold paper with an elaborate red bow. But is it really for me? Really? Really? Of course it is. You can open it. Molly tore the paper with the typical excitement of a child, but she tried to do it carefully, as if the paper itself were precious. When she finally saw the doll, she let out a shriek of pure joy. Wow, she's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. Look at her hair, just like mine. And the dress. And her little eyes. Patrick smiled, completely satisfied with her reaction. Do you really like it? Thank you. Now she'll be my friend too, Molly exclaimed, hugging the doll against her chest as if to protect it from the whole world. Patrick felt his heart warm in a way he hadn't experienced in a very long time. Molly's pure happiness was absolutely contagious. What are you going to name her? Molly held the doll away from her a little to look closely at its face, as if having a silent conversation. Claire, she said after a moment, I'm going to name her Claire. Patrick felt the world stop for a full second. His daughter's name, spoken so naturally and affectionately by Molly. It should have hurt. It should have been hard to hear, but strangely it wasn't. Why Claire? He asked, his voice soft and curious. Because it's a pretty name, and because it sounds like the name of a princess who has lots of interesting adventures. Patrick nodded, deeply moved. It's a perfect name. Absolutely perfect. Molly spent the rest of the morning playing in the library, creating elaborate stories for Claire, showing all the accessories to Patrick with infectious enthusiasm. Her energy was extraordinary, and Patrick found himself actively participating in the games, suggesting adventures for the doll, entering Molly's imaginative world. When it was time to leave, Molly hugged Patrick tightly. Thank you for the most beautiful present in the whole wide world. You're welcome, sweetie. You deserve this and so much more. That night at home, Molly couldn't stop talking about the gift. Mom, look what Patrick gave me, she said for the 10th time, showing the doll to Karen again. Karen was genuinely surprised. It was an expensive doll, very well made, full of careful details. It wasn't the kind of casual gift one gives out of obligation. She's beautiful, honey. Why did he give you such a special present? Because he said I brought joy to his house, and to his life too. Molly paused, thoughtful. Course, and you know what else, Mommy? What, sweetie? Molly sat on Karen's lap, still holding the doll Claire carefully. Mommy, Patrick talked to me. He's nice. I like him. Karen looked at her daughter's shining eyes and felt her chest tighten with emotion. She could see that Molly had grown genuinely attached to Patrick, and from the elaborate gift, from the way he treated Molly, it seemed he had grown deeply attached to her too. This made her happy, but it also sparked a motherly concern. What if it was temporary? What if Patrick changed his mind when the novelty wore off? Molly had already suffered from her own father's emotional absence in her life. Karen didn't want her to go through another disappointment with a father figure. That's wonderful, sweetie, Karen said, trying to sound completely cheerful. But remember that sometimes people change their minds about things, right? Patrick won't change, Molly said with the absolute and unshakable certainty of children. He's my real friend. And I'm his real friend. Karen hugged her daughter, sincerely hoping she was right. The next day, Patrick did something even more surprising. As Karen was finishing putting away the cleaning supplies in the downstairs closet, he approached her with an expression she had never seen before. Karen, may I make an invitation? She turned, genuinely curious. Of course, Mr. Reynolds. I would like you and Molly to go to the park with me this afternoon. I thought we could get some ice cream, maybe have a little picnic, let Molly play for a bit. Karen was literally speechless. Patrick Reynolds, the man who barely spoke to other people, who avoided social contact, was inviting her and Molly for an outing. Are you absolutely sure, sir? I am. Molly has told me several times that she likes parks and ice cream, and I thought it would be good for all of us to get out of this house for a while. Karen looked at Patrick closely. There was something fundamentally different about him. His eyes had more life, more color. His posture was less slumped, less defensive. His face seemed more relaxed. Molly really was doing him a world of good. Molly is going to be absolutely thrilled, Karen said. Then it's settled. We'll leave right after lunch. Molly shrieked with pure joy when she heard about the invitation. She spent the rest of the morning planning in detail what they would do at the park, what flavor of ice cream she would get, what games she would show Patrick, what adventures Claire would have on the playground. After lunch, the three of them left together. Patrick drove to a large park in the city center, a spacious place with lots of green space, an elaborate playground, and a famous ice cream shop that always had a line on weekends. "Wow, what a giant park!" Molly exclaimed as they got out of the car, holding Claire in one hand and Patrick's hand in the other. "How do you want ice cream first, or would you rather explore and play?" Patrick asked. "Ice cream, always ice cream first." They went to the ice cream shop, where Molly spent long minutes studying all the available flavors before choosing strawberry with rainbow sprinkles. Karen ordered Belgian chocolate, and Patrick, after a long time without thinking about flavors and personal preferences, chose vanilla with caramel sauce. They sat at a table under a leafy tree, and Molly chatted excitedly about everything she saw around them. Other parents pushing their children on the swings, dogs running freely on the grass, birds singing in the branches, teenagers playing frisbee. Her excitement for life was absolutely contagious. "Patrick, did you come to this park when you were a kid?" Molly asked, licking her ice cream. "No, this park didn't exist when I was little, but I used to go to similar places with my parents." "With who else?" "With my grandparents, cousins, sometimes the whole family." Molly nodded thoughtfully, as if processing this important information. "Now we're your family too," she declared with the devastating simplicity of children. Patrick felt his chest tighten, but it was a good, warm tightness. He looked at Molly, then at Karen, who smiled shyly but with genuine affection. "Yes," he said, surprised by how easily the answer came. "I guess you are." After the ice cream, they went to the elaborate playground. Molly ran straight for the swings, and Patrick pushed her carefully as she shouted higher, higher, with each push, laughing until she was out of breath. Karen watched from a nearby bench, still processing the complete transformation she was witnessing. The silent, deeply melancholic man had given way to someone who laughed genuinely, who played without self-consciousness, who seemed truly and utterly happy. Molly got off the swing and ran to the tall slide. Patrick followed her attentively, making sure she was always safe. When she slid down, he was waiting at the bottom with open arms to catch her. "Again, again," Molly shouted. "As many times as you want," Patrick replied, smiling in a way Karen had never seen him smile before. They played for almost 3 hours. The slide, the seesaw, the climbing frame, even hide-and-seek among the trees. Patrick participated in absolutely everything, completely forgetting his age, his social status, the problems and responsibilities he had left at home. When they finally sat on the soft grass to rest, Molly threw herself onto Patrick's lap, completely exhausted but radiant with happiness. "This was the best day of my entire life," she declared solemnly. Patrick looked at the girl on his lap. Her golden hair was a complete mess from playing. Her cheeks were rosy from running and laughing so much, her blue eyes still shining with pure happiness and a good kind of tiredness. And he felt something he hadn't experienced in 8 long months. True, complete, unreserved joy. It wasn't a joy that erased the pain of loss. Claire would always be missed, would always have a special and untouchable place in his heart, but it was a joy that coexisted with the longing, proving definitively that it was possible to feel happiness again without betraying the memory of the one who was gone. Patrick looked around the park, and families playing in harmony, children running and discovering the world, life happening everywhere with intensity and beauty, and he was part of it again, part of the current of life. It was as if life had started flowing within him again after being stagnant for months. "Thank you," he said to Molly, his voice thick with emotion. For what? For reminding me how good it is to be alive." Molly smiled and snuggled closer into his lap. Claire clutched against her chest. "Can we come here again next week?" "Whenever you want," Patrick promised, and he realized he was making plans for the future for the first time in a long time. Back at the mansion, the atmosphere was different. The afternoon at the park had created a new intimacy between Patrick, Karen, and Molly. It was as if they had crossed an invisible bridge, moving from a formal employer-employee relationship to something closer to a makeshift family. Molly ran into the house, still holding Claire the doll, and went straight to the library. It was as if that was her special place, the heart of the house where her best memories with Patrick had happened. "Patrick! Patrick! Can I show Claire all the books?" she yelled from the hallway. Patrick smiled, hearing the excitement in her voice. Karen followed him, carrying their things from the outing. "Of course, Molly. The library is yours too." Patrick entered the library behind Molly and found her spinning in the middle of the room, showing the doll everything. "Look, Claire, these are all of Patrick's books. He said no one can read all of them, but he's read a lot. And this is where we talk about stories." There was something touching about the way Molly spoke to the doll, as if it were real and could understand every word. Patrick sat in his usual armchair and watched Molly play. It was good to see her so at ease in the house, so happy. It had been a long time since these halls had echoed with a child's laughter. "Molly," he said after a moment, "would you like to meet the person who inspired me to choose the name Claire?" Molly stopped playing and looked at him with curiosity. "Who?" Patrick hesitated for a moment. He had kept Claire's photos put away, out of visitors' sight. But something prompted him to share this part of his life with Molly. "Wait here." Patrick stood up and went to the side table, where he kept a few framed pictures. Among them was a special photo, Claire in the garden, smiling at the camera, a full 6 years old, golden hair shining in the sun, blue eyes full of life, the smile that used to light up the entire house. He picked up the photo carefully and returned to where Molly was. "This was my daughter," he said, handing the photo to Molly. Her name was Claire. Molly took the photo with both hands, observing it carefully. Patrick expected to see confusion, maybe sadness, when he explained that Claire was gone. But what he saw on Molly's face was something completely unexpected. Her eyes grew enormous. Her mouth opened in a small "oh" of surprise. She looked at the photo, then at Patrick, then back at the photo again. "I knew her," Molly exclaimed, her voice full of emotion. "We used to play at the little park." Patrick felt the world stop. Molly's words echoed in the library like thunder. "What did you say?" "Claire, I knew her. We used to play at the playground near the school. She was super nice." Molly looked at the photo again, recognition shining in her eyes. "She let me borrow her jump rope one day." Patrick was completely frozen. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Molly knew Claire. She had played with his daughter. They had been friends. Are you sure?" he asked, his voice a strangled whisper. "Yes. She had hair just like mine, only longer, and blue eyes too, and she was really funny, always inventing new games." Molly paused, thoughtful. "But I haven't seen her at the playground in a while." Patrick felt his legs grow weak. He had to lean on the armchair to keep from falling. The world was spinning around him. Claire hadn't died alone. She had a friend. In the last days of her life, his daughter had found someone special to play with, to laugh with, to be a child with. And that person was Molly. The crying came with overwhelming force. Patrick collapsed into the armchair, covering his face with his hands, and cried as he hadn't cried in months. It wasn't just sadness. It was a complex mix of pain, relief, gratitude, and astonishment. Molly dropped the photo on the table and ran to him, concerned. "Patrick, why are you crying? Did I say something wrong?" Patrick managed to lift his head and look at Molly through his tears. The girl was genuinely worried, not understanding what had happened. "No, sweetie. You didn't say anything wrong. It's just..." Patrick paused, trying to find the words. "Claire was my daughter, and she went to heaven 8 months ago." Molly was silent for a moment, processing the information. "She died?" she asked with the direct simplicity of children. "Yes." Molly came closer to Patrick and, without asking, climbed onto his lap and hugged him tightly. "That's why you were so sad." Patrick hugged Molly back, still crying. But now it was a different kind of cry. It was as if something inside him was healing. "Do you know what this means, Molly?" he said after a while. "What?" "It means you were my daughter's friend. It means Claire wasn't alone in her final days. She had a special friend." Molly pulled back a little to look at Patrick. She used to talk about her daddy sometimes. She said he was really smart and had lots of books at home. Molly paused, connecting the dots. She was talking about you. Patrick felt his chest explode with emotion. His daughter had talked about him to Molly. Even in her final moments, Claire still carried her love for her father. What else did she say? That you read stories together, that you knew how to explain hard things in an easy way, and that your house was really big and full of interesting books. Every word from Molly was like a precious gift. Patrick was learning about his daughter's last moments through the eyes of a friend. Was she happy when you played together? Very. We made up crazy stories, played princess, ran around a lot. She laughed a lot. Molly smiled at the memory. And she was very generous, always shared her toys. Patrick hugged Molly again, this time with pure gratitude. Thank you for being her friend, Molly. You have no idea how much this means to me. Why? Because now I know that Claire was happy until the end, that she had someone special to play with, that she wasn't alone. Molly nodded, as if she perfectly understood the importance of this. Karen, who had been organizing things from their outing at the entrance, heard Patrick's crying and rushed to the library. When she reached the door, she saw Patrick and Molly hugging, the photo of Claire on the table. "Is everything okay?" she asked, worried. Patrick looked at Karen, his eyes still full of tears, but now shining in a different way. "Karen, I have to tell you something incredible." Karen approached, intrigued. Molly knew Claire. They were friends. They used to play together at the playground. Karen's jaw dropped. She looked at Molly, who confirmed with an enthusiastic nod. "It's true, Mum. Claire was my friend from the playground. She was really nice." Karen sat down in a nearby chair, trying to process the information. "My God," she whispered. "What an incredible coincidence." "It wasn't a coincidence," Patrick said, his voice firm despite the emotion. "It was fate. It was the universe conspiring to help me find peace." Patrick turned to Karen, feeling a sudden need to open his heart. "Karen, I need to tell you something important." She looked at him attentively. "I thought I would never smile again after I lost Claire. I thought sadness would be my only companion for the rest of my life." Patrick paused, looking at Molly, who was still on his lap. "But Molly gave that back to me. She pulled me out of my grief." Karen felt her eyes well up with tears. "She didn't just bring joy to this house," Patrick continued. "She brought me back to life, and now to find out she was Claire's friend. It's like everything makes sense, as if Claire sent Molly to take care of me." Karen wiped away the tears streaming down her face. "Mr. Reynolds, Patrick, can I say something?" "Of course." Karen took a deep breath, preparing for a confession. "I was afraid all of this would end badly, that I would lose my job, that Molly would get too attached and then get hurt when you changed your mind about us being here." Patrick listened in silence, understanding her concerns. "I needed this job," Karen continued, "and I was scared that Molly was being a bother, that her closeness to you was temporary, scared that when the novelty wore off, you would realize you didn't want a child in your life." "And now?" Patrick asked gently. Karen smiled through her tears. "Now I see it was a gift from God, that you needed each other, that it was no accident that I got this job, or that Molly had to come with me that first day." Patrick nodded, moved. "You're right, it was a gift, for all of us." Molly, who had been listening to the entire conversation with the seriousness of a child, looked at Patrick. "So can we be a real family now, forever?" Patrick looked at Molly, then at Karen. He saw hope in both their eyes, but also a genuine respect for him and his pain. "Yes," he said without hesitation, "we're a family now." Karen stood up and approached the armchair where Patrick and Molly were. Patrick extended an arm to her, and the three of them hugged together in the silent library. "Claire would approve," Patrick said after a moment. "She loved making new friends. She would be happy to know that Molly is taking care of her daddy." Molly pulled away from the hug and picked up Claire's photo from the table. "Can I talk to her?" she asked. "Of course." Molly held the photo carefully and spoke as if Claire could hear her. "Hi, Claire. It's me, Molly, your friend from the playground. I'm taking care of your daddy now. He's really nice, just like you always said, and I'm going to make him smile every day, okay?" Patrick closed his eyes, too emotional to speak. "Thanks for letting me borrow your jump rope that day," Molly continued. "And thanks for sending me to take care of your daddy. He needs a friend, and I like him a lot." When Molly finished speaking, she placed the photo back on the table very carefully. "There. Now she knows you're not alone anymore." Patrick looked at his daughter's photo, then at Molly. For the first time since Claire's death, he felt that everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. The bond between Patrick, Karen, and Molly was no longer just that of an employer and employees. It was something much deeper, forged by pain, healed by love, and blessed by a coincidence that was too big to be mere chance. It was a family that Claire had helped create, even after she was gone. And Patrick knew that, somehow, his daughter was smiling. That night, after Karen and Molly had left, Patrick was alone in the mansion. But it was a different loneliness from the one he had known for the past 8 months. It wasn't the devastating emptiness that used to swallow him whole. It was a solitude filled with good memories, emotional discoveries, and hope. He sat in the library for a while, looking at the photo of Claire that was now on the table, no longer hidden. His daughter's face seemed more serene in the picture, as if she knew he had finally found peace. Molly knew Claire. They had been friends. They had played together, laughed together, made memories together. Patrick repeated this information in his mind, still trying to fully process what it meant. His daughter hadn't spent her last days alone. She had found a special friend, someone who made her smile, who shared toys with her, who cared, and now that same person was taking care of him. Patrick rose from his armchair and walked down the hall. He passed the living room, slowly climbed the stairs. On the second floor, he stopped in front of a door that had remained closed for 8 months. The door to Claire's room. He had avoided that place since the funeral. Mrs. Henderson had offered several times to organize things, put away her belongings, turn the space into something different, but Patrick always refused. He couldn't face that room. Today was different. Patrick placed his hand on the doorknob and took a deep breath. He turned it slowly and pushed the door open. The air inside the room was still, heavy with dust and memories. The light from the hallway crept in slowly, illuminating a space that remained exactly as Claire had left it. The bed was unmade from the last day she had slept there, the pink blanket thrown aside, the pillow still holding the impression of her small head. On the nightstand, her children's books were stacked, some open to the page where she had stopped reading. Patrick entered slowly, as if visiting a sacred place. Each step echoed in the room's silence. The wall still had the drawings Claire had made, which he had framed. They were similar to the ones Molly made now, colorful figures, houses with smoke coming out of the chimney, smiling families. The innocence of children's art that had now returned to his life through another child. On the floor near the window were her toys. Dolls sat at a small table, as if Claire were in the middle of an imaginary tea party. Toy cars were scattered about, forming a city she had created, coloring books with half-painted pages. Patrick approached the shelf where Claire kept her favorite toys. On top, there was a brown teddy bear she had gotten for her first birthday. It was her constant companion. It slept with her every night, went on every trip. Patrick picked up the teddy bear carefully. It was exactly where Claire had left it on her last morning. The fabric still held a faint scent of her, that sweet child smell he thought he had forgotten. He sat on the small bed holding the bear against his chest. The mattress dipped slightly with his weight, making the same sound it did when he sat there to read stories to Claire before she went to sleep. The tears came naturally, but they were different from the tears of the past few months. They weren't tears of despair or anger. They were tears of longing mixed with gratitude. "Hi, my little girl," he said to the empty room, his voice soft. The silence answered, but it wasn't an empty silence. It was as if Claire were there, listening. "I met a friend of yours today, Molly. She told me you used to play together at the playground." Patrick paused, imagining Claire running, laughing, being a child with Molly. "She's special, Claire, just like you were. She has the same sweet nature, the same curiosity about everything. And you know what else? She's taking care of Daddy." Tears streamed down his face, but there was a small smile on his lips. "I was so sad, my little girl. I couldn't live properly without you. The house became so empty, so silent. I thought I would never be happy again. Patrick looked around the room, seeing Claire in every corner, every toy, every drawing on the wall. But Molly came and brought color back. She makes drawings for me, just like you did. She tells stories, asks questions about everything, and today I found out that you two knew each other. Patrick hugged the teddy bear tighter. I'm sure you're the one who sent her to me, weren't you? You knew Daddy needed a friend. You knew I was lost without you. The room remained silent, but Patrick felt a warm presence, as if Claire were agreeing. I've missed you so much, my princess. Every single day. Every morning I woke up and you weren't here. Every night I went to sleep without saying goodnight to you. The words came out with difficulty, heavy with 8 months of bottled-up pain. But today I understood something important. You didn't leave alone. You had a special little friend, and that little friend is now teaching me how to live again. Patrick stood up and walked to the bedroom window. Outside, he could see the garden where Molly had played that afternoon, where she had found him on the stone bench that first day. Claire, my darling daughter, he said, turning back to the room. He held the bear in one hand and wiped his tears with the other. Daddy will never forget you, never. You will always be here in my heart. You will always be my special girl. Nothing in the world will change that. Patrick paused, feeling the words form in his chest before they came out. But I'm learning to live again. The words echoed in the silent room like a promise. I'm learning that I can miss you and still smile. I can love you forever and still love other people. I can be your father forever and still be a father figure to Molly. Patrick looked at the teddy bear in his hands. Molly needs me, Claire, just like I need her, and Karen too. We've become a sort of strange, unlikely family, but it's a real family. Patrick put the teddy bear back where Claire always left it. I'll keep visiting you here. I'll keep your things, your memories, but I'll also live out there. I'll make Molly smile. I'll help Karen. I'll be a better person. Patrick walked to the bedroom door, but before leaving, he turned one last time. I love you, Claire, forever. He left the room and closed the door behind him, but this time he wasn't running from the memories. He was carrying them with him, integrated into the new life he was building. He went downstairs with a lighter heart. Claire's room would still be there, preserved, respected, but it would no longer be a place of untouchable pain. It would be a place of cherished memories, a sanctuary of love that would coexist harmoniously with the life that went on. Patrick looked around the house. Tomorrow, Molly would be back. She would bring her drawings, her laughter, her infectious energy. Karen would be back with her quiet dedication and affection, and he would be ready to welcome them, no longer as a broken man pretending to be okay, but as someone who had found a way to honor the past while embracing the future. It was a definitive step toward healing, and Patrick knew Claire would approve. 3 days after visiting Claire's room, Patrick woke up with a strange feeling. It wasn't sadness that had softened into something more manageable. It was an unease, as if something were wrong with the world. He went downstairs for coffee and noticed that Karen hadn't arrived yet. That was unusual. She always arrived on time, bringing Molly on the days the babysitter wasn't available. Patrick looked at the clock. It was past her usual time. Maybe it was traffic or some unforeseen issue with Molly. He decided to wait. An hour later, the phone rang. Patrick answered it quickly. Hello? Mr. Reynolds. It was Karen's voice, but it sounded different. Tense, worried. Karen, where are you? Sir, I apologize for the delay. Molly woke up with a high fever and isn't feeling well. I'm taking her to the doctor. Patrick's stomach immediately lurched. What kind of fever? How is she? Very high, sir, and she's very weak, complaining of a headache. I'm leaving for the hospital now. Karen, Patrick said without hesitation, I'm coming to meet you. Which hospital? You don't have to bother, Mr. Reynolds. It's just a checkup. Which hospital, Karen? The firmness in Patrick's voice left no room for argument. The Mercy General Hospital, on Central Avenue. I'm leaving now. Patrick hung up the phone and rushed to get his car keys. He didn't stop to analyze why he was reacting this way, why Molly's illness was affecting him so deeply. He just knew he had to be there. He drove faster than he should have, his heart pounding. Images of a sick Claire flashed through his mind, mixed with worries about Molly. He couldn't lose another important person, not now that he was learning to live again. He arrived at the hospital and found Karen at the reception, holding Molly in her arms. The girl was pale, her blue eyes lacking their usual sparkle, clearly unwell. "How is she?" Patrick asked, approaching immediately. "The doctor will see her in a few minutes," Karen replied. "Her fever went down a little on the way here, but she's still very weak." Patrick looked at Molly, who opened her eyes upon hearing his voice. "Patrick," she said, her voice faint, "I'm here, sweetie. I came to take care of you." Molly tried to smile, but it was obvious she felt awful. "Let me hold her for a bit," Patrick said to Karen. Karen hesitated for a moment, but handed Molly over to Patrick. The girl immediately snuggled against him, as if his presence were comforting. Patrick sat in a waiting room chair with Molly on his lap. Karen sat beside him, visibly relieved not to be alone at that moment. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "Don't thank me. Molly is important to me." As they waited for the doctor, Patrick observed their surroundings. The waiting room was filled with people in different situations. Mothers with babies, elderly people accompanied by their adult children, couples supporting each other. And there were staff everywhere, nurses rushing by, technicians pushing equipment, cleaning staff working discreetly to keep the environment clean and safe. Patrick looked at a nurse organizing files at the reception desk. She was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and a focused but kind expression. She probably had a family at home, children, grandchildren, a whole life of experiences and worries. Nearby, a lab technician was talking quietly with a colleague about test results. They were real people, with real stories, not just employees doing tasks. Patrick realized, with a shock, that he had never truly looked at the staff who had surrounded him all these years. Mrs. Henderson, who had managed his house for over a decade, the gardener who came religiously every week, the cleaning crew who worked in silence to keep everything running. He knew their names, paid their salaries, but he had never really seen them as people. To him, they were just extensions of the machine that kept his life in order. Now, holding a sick Molly in his arms, surrounded by people who dedicated their lives to caring for others, Patrick understood something fundamental. Life wasn't about power or wealth. It wasn't about successful companies or big houses. It was about human connection, about people caring for one another, about hands reaching out when someone is in need. Karen was here because she cared about her daughter. He was here because he cared about them both. The doctors and nurses were here because they chose to dedicate their lives to caring for strangers. Patrick looked at Molly's small hand resting on his. It was so small, so fragile. All the wealth in the world would be useless if something happened to her. "Molly Johnson," a nurse called out. Karen stood up quickly. "That's us." Patrick stood up too, still carrying Molly. "The doctor will see her now." In the exam room, Dr. Evans examined Molly carefully. Patrick and Karen stood by, watching every move, every expression on the doctor's face. "It seems to be a common virus," the doctor finally said. "Nothing serious, but she needs rest and plenty of fluids. The fever should be completely gone in 2 or 3 days." Patrick felt an immense sense of relief. Molly was not in any real danger. "Are you sure it's nothing serious?" Karen asked. "I am. It's very common in children this age. With the right medication and care, she'll be fine in no time." They returned home with Molly sleeping in the back seat. Patrick insisted on driving them straight to Karen's apartment to make sure they got there safely. "Call me if you need anything," he said before leaving. "It doesn't matter what time." Over the next few days, Patrick called several times to check on Molly. Karen sent regular updates. The fever had gone down. She was eating better, playing a little. On the 3rd day, Karen called with good news. "She's completely recovered, Mr. Reynolds. She even asked to come to work with me today because she wants to see you. Please bring her, I've missed her." When Molly arrived, running into the library as she always did, Patrick hugged her tightly. "How are you, sweetie?" "Good. The doctor said I'm strong and brave." Patrick smiled, relieved to see her back to her normal self. That afternoon, while Molly played in the library and Karen worked in the house, Patrick made a decision. The experience at the hospital had changed something fundamental in him. He had realized how many people worked to make his life function, and he had never properly acknowledged it. The next day, Patrick did something he had never done in all the years he had lived in that house. He asked Mrs. Henderson to organize a special breakfast for all the staff. Everyone, Mrs. Henderson, the gardener, the cleaning crew, the security company, and everyone who works here. Mrs. Henderson was surprised but arranged everything as requested. On Saturday morning, Patrick went down to the kitchen where he found 8 people gathered around the large table. Mrs. Henderson, Karen, the gardener, Mr. Roberts, 3 women from the cleaning crew, and 2 security guards. Everyone seemed a bit uncomfortable, unsure of why they had been summoned. Patrick stood before the group and took a deep breath. "Good morning, everyone. I know you must be wondering why I've asked you all to come here today." There were low murmurs of agreement. "I want to talk to you about something I've discovered recently. For years, I lived in this house thinking only of myself, my pain, my problems." Patrick paused, looking at each face around the table. But in the last few months, I've learned something important. I've learned that none of us live alone, that we all depend on each other, and that you, each one of you, are a part of my life in a way I had never properly recognized. Mrs. Henderson smiled shyly. Karen looked at Patrick with admiration. "Mrs. Henderson," Patrick said, addressing her directly. "You've taken care of this house for over 10 years. You keep everything running. You worry about every detail. Without you, I would be lost." Mrs. Henderson blushed slightly. "Mr. Roberts," Patrick continued, "your garden has always been perfect. Even when I couldn't even see the beauty in the flowers, you continued to care for everything with dedication." The gardener nodded, clearly emotional. Patrick addressed each person individually, acknowledging their work, their dedication, their importance in keeping not just the house, but his life running. "And Karen," he said, turning to her, "you brought something to this house that I didn't know was missing. You brought life, joy, and your wonderful daughter, who taught me how to smile again." Karen wiped away a tear that rolled down her cheek. "I want you all to know that you are not just employees to me. You are important people. You are part of my chosen family. And I hope we can continue together for many years to come." There was a moment of emotional silence. Then Mr. Roberts started to clap, and soon everyone was applauding. "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds," Mrs. Henderson said. "This means a lot to all of us." During breakfast, Patrick talked with each person, asking about their families, their dreams, their worries. For the first time, he saw each employee as a whole human being, not just as someone providing a service. When everyone had left, Patrick remained in the kitchen with Karen and Molly. "That was beautiful," Karen said. "I've never seen anything like it." Molly approached Patrick with something in her hand. "I have something for you," she said. It was a small flower she had picked from the garden, a white daisy with a yellow center. "What's this for?" Patrick asked, crouching down to her level. Molly carefully placed the flower in the pocket of Patrick's jacket. "Now you have color again," she said, smiling. Patrick looked at the flower in his pocket, then at Molly. The simplicity of the girl's observation struck him deeply. He really did have color again, not just on his jacket, but in his entire life. Patrick hugged Molly tightly and thought, "I lost Claire, but I gained a chance to be human again." It wasn't a trade, it wasn't a replacement. It was evolution. It was growth. It was life teaching him that it's possible to carry the pain of loss alongside the joy of new connections. Patrick smiled, looking around the kitchen where he had just acknowledged the humanity of every person who was part of his life. He looked at Karen, who was smiling proudly. He looked at Molly, who had completely transformed him. For the first time since Claire's death, Patrick felt completely at peace. He was finally reconciled with life. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.